What I tell upper management about ISA and CTPAT Trade Compliance is it's really your competitive advantage.
Welcome to Simply Trade, brought to you by Global Training Center. My name is Lalo, and together with my co-host Andy, we have well over 60 years of combined trade, logistics, and supply chain experience. Along the way, we have seen and witnessed different challenges in trade compliance. We decided to put this show together and call on our friends and colleagues in the business to hang out with us and share their knowledge in all things trade. Thank you for spending some time with us. Enjoy the show. Andy, today's show, we have another guest talking about CTPAT. And before anybody says another CTPAT program, we're not going to talk about what everybody believes or remembers or thinks of CTPAT. Okay, so CTPAT, I guess, as you know, Andy, and many people may know, there's kind of two components to it. There's the supply chain security part, and then what used to be ISA. So now that's called CTPAT Trade Compliance. So so we're going to be hitting on that second part, the less known part of it. So,
well, and the ISA, for those that are maybe tuning in and don't know what this alphabet soup we're talking about is importer self-assessment. And that's basically where you're giving to, and help me out here, Lalo, because when we're bringing on our guest today, this guy is unbelievable. We both know him.
Yes.
I've had the absolutely wonderful opportunity to get to work with him for so long. And so anyway, that said, when we're talking about the importer self-assessment and now as you're talking about the CTPAT program, it's basically where you're giving a commitment to the U.S. government, aka CBP or Customs Border Protection, that you're going to cross the T's and dot the I's and be more upfront and have them a part of your compliance program so that you are a good corporate citizen and all those kinds of things. Does that kind of ring true there, Lalo?
yeah, it sounds about right. And again,
All
you
right.
and I always say that we're not here to tell people about the topic. That's why we invited Deep here on our show, because I know he's been doing this for a long time, and he's pretty much almost like wanted to commit to this area of trade compliance. Not necessarily exclusively, but he has done a lot of work in this area. And so let's bring him on and let's see what he's got to say, I guess.
Well, Deep, welcome to our show. I'll tell you that I am really excited as always to get to see you, my friend. And it is such, you always bring a smile to my face. So.
Thank you so much, Andy and Lalo. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited.
This is going to be a good discussion. So we're going to get to tap your expertise here, my friend.
Yeah, and I feel
My
a little
pleasure.
left out because I never worked for the Purple, so.
Yes, in the spirit of full disclosure, Andy and I were colleagues for over a dozen years at FedEx. It was a great joy working with Andy.
Oh, listen, he's being kind. Listen, I could screw up a 2-car parade and Deep would come in and save the day. Okay, listen, we're going to get into talking about the CTPAT program. So, Deep, you obviously have a strong expertise and you help a lot of clients, I'm sure, and people in general. I know you've talked on this topic for quite some time. Just open us up, just in general, as far as the CTPAT program, and more specifically, what we're going to get into of what a importing company should be doing with this program.
Andy, as we're recording this, it's the 21st anniversary of 9/11.
Yes.
The tragedy that affected our country.
Right.
And back then, customs actually totally changed itself. It became part of the Department of Homeland Security. It merged with Border Control. And it was spending all its efforts on cargo security. And trade compliance kind of fell by the wayside. And in 2002, Customs first announced the Importer Self-Assessment Program, ISA. It's been around 21 years. That, in a sense, really is what I call the green channel for frequent flyers. Whenever you pass immigration, you see a green channel and a red channel. What do? If you're like me, you make direct eye contact, smile, and greet the officer and go through the green channel, right? So the ISA is pretty much like that, where customs is giving reputable importers the opportunity of fewer inspections and trusting them. But in return, companies need to say that, yes, we've got good controls over our customs processes, and we are low risk for customs. So it's been around for a long time. It had about 400 to 500 members. There was a lot of myth that you should not let the fox in the henhouse and get so close to customs, which I disagree with. I think it's a great partnership. But the last few years, this program was in abeyance. And that's because customs was trying to combine CTPAT, which is cargo security, with ISA. And last month, in August, they finally announced that the ISA is rechristened as CTPAT Trade Compliance, and it's open to new members.
Oh, that's
So this
great.
is a great opportunity,
That's
for
great.
companies to join.
Well, you touched on something where there's a group of people, shall we say, or whatever. Just the general sentiment is you don't want to, as you were saying, let the fox into the hen house. It kind of illustrates, it's not, looking at the government as the fox, but it's more of a scenario where dealing with the government has been, in days gone by, somewhat adversarial. And it's almost, they're on one side of the table, you're on the other, they come in and look at it, versus, hey, let's do a partnership with the government, with CBP in this particular case, and or other government agencies. But CBP is the one driving this, where you're trying to be, again, more upfront, a good corporate citizen, and that aligning with each other, so you come up with a win-win solution of satisfying what the government's trying to do, which is not letting anything that it would harm people, if you will, or be detrimental to people and or the economy. And two, that the appropriate duties and taxes are assessed and collected. And so aligning with customs in this case, and your own company and what you're striving to do, hopefully you can come up with a win-win with the CTPAT compliance program. Would you agree with that, Deep?
Absolutely, Andy. And I hope more importers think the way you do. What I've told clients is, when you let customs in, there's, obviously mutual trust. And customs has said that based on your ISA application, which is now CTPAT Trade Compliance, it's quite a mouthful. We've got to come up with an acronym. They're not going to immediately call up regulatory audit and say, issue some penalties. This company is in a bad shape. So obviously, you don't want to apply for CTPAT Trade Compliance, formerly known as ISA, unless you have your ducks in a row, unless you've done an evaluation and you've generally got all the best practices of reasonable care and, a written manual, a system where, you're capturing all the correct duties and taxes, you're doing some sort of internal audits, and then you can go to customs and say, we think we're ready. So,
well, there is, to your point, Deep, is that there are some fundamental things that before somebody decides to step into the trade compliance program here, is there are some fundamental things that you should, as a company, make sure are in place. So if you're an executive with a company, this is, why are our goods always constantly getting held up? It's like, well, you need to streamline some processes, but you may need to take a look at. So as an executive, ask the questions of your sourcing, of your compliance, of your logistics and or transportation, and even your legal department and possibly your IT, and pull them together into one meeting and say, let's talk about this.
Yeah, and that's right, Andy. Before anybody decides to join the ISA program, always do it doesn't need to be a full-blown audit, but do a quick audit.
Yeah.
So almost like the first phase of a customs audit, the pre-assessment survey. So you can quickly check if you're generally in the top end of compliance and if there's any major risk areas, so you can fix that before you apply for ISA.
So let me stop right there. I was going to ask you a question, nigger Lalo, to you.
No. To me. Go ahead.
Yeah. To you is in your company. Do you have some programs that are associated with, maybe preparing for an ISA audit, where now would be CTPAT Trade Compliance audit, like a self audit of some kind?
Well, we do actually. What happens with us is that we do have our importing class, and then we also have an advanced importing class. That advanced importing class is specifically for audits. It's specifically for that purpose, and we just go in a full day in there, and it's a heads down, textbook. Let's figure out what would trigger or how to prepare for an audit more than anything. So yeah, that's exactly right. And then that's what I was going to get at as well. And I was going to ask Deep, we all need to be prepared for an audit. I mean, obviously, eventually, or it's inevitable sometimes, I guess, that you may get audited, even if it's just an invoice, right? I mean, and not your whole, not a whole bunch of entries, but so who is eligible for this program?
Great question. So, let's just step back a second and look at CTPAT, the program.
Sure.
Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism. There's different aspects of different types of importers who are eligible to join CTPAT. Could be companies, could be freight forwarders, could be carriers, right? And in deciding whether I should even join CTPAT, we ask whether international is a regular part of your business. If you're importing and that's more than 25% of your business, then I'd say, yeah, consider joining CTPAT. Now, ISA, which is now CTPAT Trade Compliance, is only open to CTPAT companies that have been around for the last 2 years. So first, you've got to join CTPAT. Now, if you're a CTPAT importer, then you ask yourself, is this CTPAT Trade Compliance, or I'm kind of partial to the word ISA, a good fit for me? And what I say is yes, if you have any risk of a customs audit known as a focused assessment. Because one of the big benefits of this trade compliance program, CTPAT Trade Compliance, is that you're taken out of the focused assessment pool, which means no regular customs audits. You will still be subject to single issue, audits on some minor issues if it comes up, but you'll be taken out of the audit pool. So if you think as an importer you're in the audit pool, which is usually the bigger importers, if you're importing more than 30 million a year, okay, you're in the top 9,000 importers. If you're importing more than 100 million a year, for sure, one of these days you're going to get a call from customs saying, guess what? We randomly picked you. Why? Because you have deep pockets and, you're a big importer. So for those companies that import more than, I'd say, 30 million a year, definitely over 100 million a year, please join ISA so you can come out of the audit pool. And even if customs doesn't think you're good enough to join ISA, they will, give you a lot of corrective action. And that by itself is great for your business and good business practices.
All right, Deep, with that, though, let me delineate something here where there is a difference of becoming a CTPAT member and becoming a CTPAT Trade Compliance designated company. So becoming a CTPAT member is basically where you are saying, Customs, I'm going to partner with you to do what we need to do on taking actions against any type of terrorism threat or attack against the U.S. And so becoming a member like that, that means that you're going to be showing due diligence and doing the denied party screening and ensuring that your transactions are appropriate. Or if you see anything that's within that you would think raises some concern, you will raise that red flag up with customs and say, just letting you know. So that CTPAT member is you as a company, you are going to do what you can to keep customs informed if anybody in your company becomes aware of something that could be considered a potential problem.
That's right. And let me just clarify further. In order to join CTPAT Trade Compliance, you need to have been a CTPAT Tier 2 or Tier 3 member. And CTPAT has 3 tiers. Once you become a member, you're Tier 1. Once you're validated, which is customs friendly visit, then you're Tier 2. And Tier 3 means you have best in class practices. Right. So if you're Tier 2 and Tier 3, you are eligible to join the trade compliance piece, formerly known as ISA.
Right. So
okay,
Deep,
good.
Is this, I was going to say real quick, Deep. So is this, I understood, from the reasoning behind doing CTPAT trade compliance within CTPAT. Clarify this, I guess, if I'm wrong, is that because we wanted to have mutual recognition with other countries on these programs, I guess other countries like the AEOs were saying
for Europe,
you're falling short on the trade compliance piece. Is that true? Is that why mostly this was added to CTPAT, or am I on the right track there? Or?
Absolutely. So 21 years ago, when customs created CTPAT, at the same time, almost in parallel, or maybe inspired by the US, the World Customs Organization, talked about trusted trader programs. And the European Union came up with the AEO program, Authorized Economic Operators. So they took a lot of the CTPAT, parameters of cargo security, but they also added customs compliance. So I think what the United States government and customs has done really is align our CTPAT program and take it to the next level by incorporating trade compliance in it as well. So now we're in line with the World Customs Organization best practices.
So here we are today, and it's actually, it's got a lot of good momentum. So if you're really, I guess the benefits, one of them would be a more streamlined process for your importations, provided that, you're crossing the T's, dotting the I's and whatnot, and your goods should be moving through. So if you have any goods that are getting held up, even resolving the issues in general, you should be able, as a CTPAT trade compliance person, and the resources that are respected and provided to you from the government, you should be able to resolve some of those issues pretty quick. With that, that's some of the benefits. What about the downsides? What about,
I was going to say that too. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just going like, this must cost you a fortune, right?
Not really. Andy, it's funny. Let me just talk about the benefits for a second. And I was thinking about telling you something, and then you talked about the downside. And I've seen customers go through audits.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, it's really injurious to your health. I've had customers after the audit or during the audit take time off because they've developed blood pressure. Somebody has developed a heart disease, and that's all brought on by
a lot of stress. Yes.
And guess what's going to happen when your company gets selected for an audit? Is your all fingers are pointing at you, right? So what I say is one reason to join this trade compliance component is really to get better sleep at night. Imagine, all of you have pretty swanky home offices, and the home office deduction is a red flag. I've never had a IRS tax audit, but this is like a tax audit on the customs side. If customs gave you an option that, well, if you are a compliant individual, you have an option to join this program, wouldn't you try to be compliant and then apply to this program? It's like a get out of jail free card. So, what are the downsides? Okay. The downside could be that when you go to your CEO and say, I've got this great idea.
There's
we've
this
got
thing
this
called
ISA.
the CTPAT Trade Compliance. It's really sexy. It's really cool, man. It's like, yeah, you really want it, right?
Yeah, and guess what? Now you're going to be managing this program, and okay, let's see you become an ISA member, CTPAT Trade Compliance, in 3 months. So that could be one downside, honestly. The other downside is finally you're going to be pushed to take on the mantle of creating a compliant organization, and you don't know where to start. You will not get cooperation from purchasing, engineering, quality, legal, finance. So those are all the downsides. But those downsides could have been faced even if you had to create a compliance program to begin with.
Right.
And Lalo, I'm sure in the class you teach, you mentioned that customs compliance is everyone's responsibility,
yeah.
not just the compliance people.
Yeah.
Finance has a role,
Right.
purchasing has a role, so on and so forth. What I would say is that if you can get the buy-in, you can do a very quick, high-level audit, identify issues and fix them. You will be in a good shape for customs to come in during the application review meeting
Right.
and say, okay, I think you're good enough to join ISA. A lot of companies, they kind of feel they're not worthy. They say, Deep, I don't think we're ready. And I tell them, I've seen some companies who've got in, and I think I can take you past the finish line. So, be confident.
Yeah, so
Well,
we like to
even
say
I-
around here, Deep, no, real quick, we like to say around
ahead.
here that the trade compliance is a responsibility from the C-suite to the C-suite, from the custodial all the way up to the CEO. That's the way we like to say it. Anyway, go ahead, Andy.
Well, no, here's one of the things. We've had some discussions in previous shows, and this comes up, and I think it's very appropriate in this because you hit on something where you really need support from other areas. It's not just the compliance part of it. And as we're just alluding to here, it's across the board here as far as if you're going to be a compliant company. And what we're talking about, again, your imports, your exports, your international transactions, things of that nature. With that, one of the things that has been utilized in some larger companies, and it would be, in my opinion, one of a strong one for even smaller companies, and that is like let's just call it a logistics council, a transportation council, an international trade council, where there is the purchasing group is represented, the compliance, obviously, import-export compliance, the logistics, transportation's there. Your customer service group is involved. Your IT for sure, but IT more in that in regards to your warehousing systems, your purchase order systems. It may be several folks from the IT, your customer service systems. So your IT involved. Legal needs to be involved in it. Your and other marketing and engineering and things of that nature, so that you have these trade councils and you talk through different scenarios.
Andy, what a great idea. In fact, I always recommend that, especially my small medium-sized companies, who don't have a large trade compliance team, always develop an international trade council. Exactly as you said, representatives from all the relevant departments. You named most of them. I'll also add engineering, R&D for new product initiation and customer service. Many times, people in charge of the RMAs will, you can hear them say, "Yeah, we'll sign a NAFTA certificate, or just put on $5 value." So,
No
in
problem.
addition, yeah. In addition, I'd say meet at least every 3 months. Now, I've actually had a client who they said, Deep, we ran out of things to talk about every 3 months. I said, no, no, no. You know what you can do as a trade compliance person is give everyone a quick overview of all the changes going on, and there's a lot. And also talk about certain transactions where maybe you got pushback or resistance, or this could be improvement. So, Andy, absolutely, what a great idea, getting everybody together.
We've talked about a lot of this getting ready yourself. I would recommend of what, Lalo's company having some training, and you do your own self-assessment, if you will, and go through some things. Okay, fine. Now you're ready for an expert to come in before you go to customs and apply. Have some experts come in and actually test and kick the tires on your truck and see, does it work or not, right?
Absolutely. And you mentioned a great point. Just step back a second. What you mentioned about archiving. Customs, when they get your CTPAT Trade Compliance application, they're going to review it, do some background research on you. They've obviously got all the data on you. And they'll set up an application review meeting. And that's when they're going to give you a couple of entry numbers and want to do that cradle to grave, saying, can you please pick up, show us the invoice, the sales contract, proof of payment, pick and pack, proof of quantity received. And so what you've got to do in customs eyes is to prove that you've got a system of records that demonstrates the accuracy of customs transactions. That's their word. They want to see, that you've got a system, that there's no revenue loss. So, Andy, as I highly recommend they take Lalo's second level import audit course. There's also a free resource on my website. I'm not self-promoting at all.
Hey, I'll promote it. Deep, you've got a phenomenal little tool there for people. So go ahead and promote the heck out of it right here. Because this is, folks, if you haven't tried or even looked at this, you need to hit Deep's website.
Right.
And we will post his website in our show notes. But Deep, go ahead and tell them what you've got there.
Thanks. Well, Andy, on the bottom of my homepage of DSG Global, it's dsgglobal.com. There's a 25-question risk assessment. Now, I know a 25-question risk assessment that takes you 5 minutes appears really flimsy, but at least it gets you thinking, and you'll get an automated report immediately with your trade compliance score. So you can really take it to your management and say, I did this little quiz, and guess what? We're 40%. So, it at least gives you something to start with before you want to bring in experts for a little more robust analysis.
It works as a fantastic tool to engage in discussions with upper management and all. And the thing is, you don't want to take that survey, if you will, to try and beat the survey to say, hey, look, we can come out on top. You got to be really honest. And then when you go through and look at it, here's something else that says, okay, do you have a strong archive for, let's just say entries for right now?
That's a question.
And, and that's one of those where you got, kind of maybe sort of, you say, yes, we've got an archive. I wouldn't say if it's a really good one or not. Let's say you go to upper management. It's like, wait a minute, why don't we? I just spent a, boatload of money on, some new system in the past that somebody justified, and let's look at it and say, well, have you ever seen anybody pull data out of it? Because it's been, you're working hard. Folks, you need to look at your systems and your processes so that those systems and processes are working for you, not you for those systems. And there's a lot of times that it's too archaic. So our IT people say, yeah, we've stored it efficiently. It's like, great, but you can't get anything out of it. It's like, come on now. So that's the thing that with your tool, I will say it is wonderful to be able to at least get the conversation going, and it will spark where you need maybe some expertise to come in and alongside you to say, we need some help specifically in this area, not across the board, just in this one area.
Right.
Anyway. Sounds great.
Yeah, I guess with that also, we're we're kind of reaching here the end of our time. But Deep, do you have any final words? And also, another thing we've added to the show that we like to ask our guests. I mean, if you want to, that's fine. I mean, if you're not ready for this, that's fine. But we always ask them for a obviously any closing comments that you might want to make, and then secondly, do you have like a quick 1 minute best practices tip that you want to give the audience about whatever trade compliance, that you might think is a really good idea? So, but anyway, go ahead and then we'll wrap up with that.
Wow. Lalo, this wasn't rehearsed, so
No, I know.
I just hearing a question now. What I would really say is for upper management, we've seen that companies that do international trade, they're in business longer, they're more profitable, and they pay their employees more, But companies are very scared of don't let this happen to you and customs audits. And, they don't know what they don't know about going overseas, and many of them try to stay domestic. So I would really say send your people to training, explore new markets. At the same time, I just saw a recent study published by McKinsey that talked about the latest emerging and foundational technologies. And guess what? A lot of that is controlled by the BIS, which has huge penalties. So knowledge is really power in international trade. So please continue to disseminate the great training, Andy and Lalo, that y'all offer. And, you're really helping the country and its economic recovery.
Thank you.
Yeah. Deep. Listen, it has been a pleasure, my friend. Once again, you just, it's always great. I love talking with you. You're so knowledgeable, and you're just one of those guys I just love hanging out with. You're a good guy.
Yes,
Same here, Andy and Lalo. Thanks for having me on today.
Sure.
Y'all are doing such a great job. I'm just loving all the episodes.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you. You have a good afternoon, and we'll talk to you soon.
That's great. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest in the show, or would like to sponsor Simply Trade, or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com, or you can DM us on Twitter at simplytradepod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. Simply Trade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by Simply Trade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only, and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.